Okay, so we're doing proofs for the first time with no steps given, which means it's a good idea to do step 0, which is have a plan before you start writing anything. Already know basically everything you're going to do. The best analogy I can give you is the pre-GPS maps idea. Before there was maps on phones and it tell you turn here, you just had to know and look up ahead of time before you left where I'm going to go, how am I going to turn, how far do you go on that road before you turn left. You already knew what the turns were before you actually left. Otherwise, you'll just get lost, right? Same thing here. It's a great idea to go through and mark up. Okay, first I'm going to say these are congruent, right? Then I'm going to say these are congruent, these angles, right? Then I'm going to say these are congruent. And then by side, angle, side, the triangle is congruent. So you already kind of know from beginning to end what you're doing. You're not figuring out, okay, I got 3 steps done, what's the next step? It's just not a good idea because it's easy to forget something if you don't have a plan ahead of time. And then you could be consciously counting congruencies. Like make sure you get up to 3 before you write our last step, which is always given to you up here. That's the last thing you're going to write under statement. And the reason, of course, for a triangle congruence would have to be one of the 4 that you know. So you already kind of know you're looking for any of these. Okay? Side and angle, angle, side. So you already kind of know if it's triangle congruent to triangle. Now, if it had another congruency, then you might use a CPCTC or something. But it definitely helps to have that. So you just start off by saying, like, what is it? AE is congruent to BD. Now, what is wrong with my statement right here so far? What's missing from this? The segment lines, right? So details like this, that's what I was talking earlier. You can have all the right steps. These details do technically matter. Okay? So make sure you have them there. It's not optional. Same thing, number 2. Got angle E and D. So angle E congruent to angle D. That's also given. Oops. And then lastly we have, what is that? BE and CD. Okay, again with some stylistics. Notice how there are 2 triangles here. There's this triangle, we'll call it triangle 1, and this triangle, which we'll call triangle 2. Notice on my statements, I put them in that arrangement as well. Everything from triangle 1 is on the left side of my congruency. Everything on the right side is from the other triangle. It just makes things easier if you're consistent. Technically, if I went angle D is congruent to angle E, yes, that's still considered correct, but it's much easier if you keep things organized this way, because you'll just get used to seeing, like, when I'm looking on the left-hand side, I know I'm looking at this triangle. Okay? Another thing, you'll notice how I listed these. I knew ahead of time that I was going to use side, angle, side. What's the order that I listed these in? Side, angle, side, so that by the end of your proof, it's very clear to see that my 4th reason is going to be side, angle, side, because I listed that order. Now, if I put number 2 as number 1 and I put the angle first and then 2 sides, is it wrong? No. But it just, if you're planning things out, it just makes things a little bit neater, a little bit tighter to arrange things in a certain deliberate order as opposed to just randomly say, okay, that's congruent, okay, 1, oh, that one's congruent 2, okay, that's also congruent 3, and then I'll just figure out what the theorem is later. If you figure out what the theorem is before you start writing, you can write it in the right order. You can also be thinking, I got 2 triangles, I'll put this triangle. Sometimes it's a top and bottom, not a left and a right, so you can say top triangle will be this one, the bottom triangle will be this, and so on, right? So these are all suggestions just for, number 1, as you're doing this, there's going to be many correct ways of doing it, but when you go to compare answers, it's a pain in the butt. If you're like, oh, you're given number 1 matches up my given number 3. Oh, your given number 2 is the same as my given number 1. You're like, oh, wait a minute, where is it? You know, like, but even if you do all this, it could still be a little confusing because, like, these two sides could be interchanged and it's still side angle side. So just know it's not a perfect, you know, to have everything line up, but it is an attempt. So those are just a few tips for stylistic reasons will make your proof writing a lot easier, especially when these things get more difficult. You saw on the side IXL today, once you got to 63 points, how it turned into like 7, 8, 9 steps all of a sudden.
Yes.
So that's where we're going to hit up after break, and you want to have this kind of writing down now on the simple proofs, so when we do that from the more complicated proofs, you're already kind of got the system going and it's organized and easy to follow, okay? So keep that in mind as you go along. Are there any others on here we need to go over or talk about? Any requests, or are we pretty much okay? Okay. All right. So I'll let you guys go ahead and finish that up, and remember this will be due tomorrow in class.